We all want to be strong. We see the weakness as a defect that we must overcome. But what if the base same as what we consider weakness is a lie? The philosophy of Nietzsche forces us to ask ourselves a scary question. What if our most important virtues, famous, kindness, humility, no are signs of good character, but sophisticated tools designed to stop us? And then we have to do the most important question of your life. That feeling of weakness that you have carried away, that voice that tells you to become small, it's really you, or are they just the invisible bars of a cage in which you never gave yourself realize that you were? This journey is about giving you the key. We'll start by taking that one feeling of weakness and seeing it from a new perspective, not like your defect, but as the first sign on a map that takes you back to your own power. In the end, you will see the cage as it is, and you will be ready to be free. Let's start by explaining its architecture. Have you ever felt it? That silent pressure to be nice, to be liked, to not cause problems. We call it courtesy, humility, kindness. We consider it a strength of character. But what if it isn't? What if it is? Precisely what keeps you weak. Nietzsche presents a thesis disturbing. Weakness is not a natural defect, but a system of meticulously constructed values and deeply internalized. It is an invisible prison that they have placed on you, conditioned to build. This conditioning begins in what Nietzsche considered the main field of herd training, our educational institutions. He argued that modern education did not is designed to free the spirit, but to domesticate it. Its true purpose is not to cultivate sovereign individuals, but to produce who he called the most current men possible, predictable individuals, manageable and useful within the state machinery. This system, in your opinion, nips the new ones in the bud ideas, developing a society of people trained only for obey. And this training begins long before the classroom, in the same cages of family and culture. Since our earliest age, we are taught to fear our own uniqueness. They impose on us, as Nietzsche writes, thoughtless habits and beliefs conditioned. Any deviation from the standard will be received with mockery or concern, instilling a permanent fear that imposes conformity. The individual, with the potential to rise above the mediocre mass, is pressured by your environment to become, words Nietzsche's, in a herd animal, something eager to please, sickly, and mediocre. This is where the illusion becomes truly insidious. The system takes the survival strategies of the weak and elevates them to virtues universal. Kindness, obedience, and usefulness for the community are valued as the summit of morality. Nietzsche argues that this morality of flock is then proclaimed as the only true morality, precisely to keep the most evil spirits at bay, free and dangerous. It is a passivity collective designed to prevent someone really stands out. It's a morality that is not born of force, but of impotence. As you can see, this weakness you feel is not a simple one lack of will, is not a fragility innate, it is a form of self-betrayal, a surrender to the conformism that has been imposed on you, manufactured and sold to you as a virtue. The prison is not made of steel, it is made of the values for which you have been praised. This raises the most important question, important of all. Why? Why society would build such a prison perfect and would convince us to love our own cell? To answer that, we must discover one of the robberies most daring in the history of humanity. The great moral investment that turned the strength into sin and weakness into weapon. So why? Why is it built the invisible prison of the weakness? Nietzsche's answer is shocking. It wasn't a mistake. It was a revolution, a silent spiritual blow that completely revolutionized our understanding of morality. To understand how it happened, we must first understand what the morale was like. Before the robbery, Nietzsche called original morality master morality. It was created by the strong, the nobles, the leaders of the ancient world. Their sense of good was simple, a spontaneous yes to themselves. They observed their own qualities, pride, courage, strength, ambition, and they said, this is good. Bad was just an afterthought, a label contemptuous of the weak, the shy, the pathetic. His morality was a celebration of power. But what about the other side? Weak, the oppressed, the powerless, they could not defend themselves with their bodies, so his anger had nowhere to go, churned inside him, oozing out in which Nietzsche called resentment, a deep and vengeful hatred born of impotence. And this latent hatred says he got creative. He needed an enemy. So the weak person, he first looked towards his master, and in an act that Nietzsche calls the most vengeful spiritual, he did not say, "I am good." He said, "You are bad." This was the moment of the robbery, the slave rebellion in the moral. In a brilliant act of investment, slave morality completely upset the values of the I love. Everything that masters loved, power, pride, ambition, self-sufficiency, became sin redefined as evil. And everything the slaves needed to survive, humility, patience, obedience, and compassion, rose suddenly to universal virtues, renamed as good. It was the weapon ultimate of the weak, a form of corrupt the conscience of the masters and make them feel guilty about their own strength. That moral DNA is now within of all of us. That's why we often feel that ambition is selfish, that pride is a sin, and that's why the narrative of being a victim may seem so morally powerful. Slave morality triumphed, and its values now resonate in that prison invisible. But Nietzsche believed that there is a fundamental force within you, that this morality was designed to suppress a force powerful enough as if to break the chains for always. A growth engine that called the will to power. So, if our modern morality is a cage built from the revenge of the weak, how can we escape? Nietzsche believed that the key is reactivate the fundamental engine that drives every living being. He called it will to power, and it is not what you think. Forget the idea of a ruthless desire to dominate others. It is a dangerous misunderstanding. Nietzsche, the will to power is the most basic and irrational impulse of the life. The impulse to grow, to expand, overcome resistance, and discharge your force. I believe that life does not just want to survive. The will wants to prosper of the artist to create, the will of the philosopher of finding the truth. All they are expressions of that same fundamental force. The will to power in itself, it is neutral. It is neither good nor as bad as electricity. Their moral quality is determined entirely by how it is expressed. The highest of this power is not to overturn it outward to control others, but to turn it inwards for what Nietzsche called its self-overcoming. It is to channel that pure energy towards the self-control, towards the construction of oneself into something else. The goal is not dominate no one, but rather dominate oneself same. And this is where it all connects. Remember that suppuration, resentment of the weak we are talking about, that desire for spiritual revenge. Nietzsche would say that it is simply a frustrated and destructive expression of the will to power. It is the will to someone who wants to hurt just to feel a fleeting feeling of power. But the truly strong person acting from a fullness of life not has a need to hurt. His power builds, creates, and enriches life. This engine is inside you. The theft moral of the story was designed to make you fear it, to make you believe that your own impulse is evil, but it is the source of all your potential. Then, how do you take advantage of it? How do you use it to build and not to destroy? For this, you must learn the discipline of forge. You must learn the lesson more Nietzsche's challenge. How to use the pain same as the hammer that you transforms into someone unbreakable. Our entire modern world is based on just one idea. Comfort is good and suffering is bad. It's a religion of cozy comfort, as he called it Nietzsche. But what if this obsession with avoiding pain is precisely what keeps you trapped in that prison invisible? And if suffering is not the problem, but the solution, Nietzsche makes a crucial distinction. There is the suffering of the weak, the ignoble suffering. This is the pain that leads to bitterness, self-pity, and that suppuration, point resentment. We talk about that. It diminishes you. But then there is the suffering of the strong, noble suffering. This is a difficulty that is accepted actively as a challenge, a resistance to test and strengthen. It is the active antidote against victim mentality. This is the psychological alchemy that is found in the heart of his philosophy, the transformation of pain into power. Try to consciously rethink the difficulties, not as a misfortune, but as a necessary ingredient for growth. It's about actively giving it a purpose, a meaning to your suffering. Pain is not meaningless. Converts into the price you are willing to pay for one more goal high. Knowledge, character, strength. This is the will to power in action, using resistance to make yourself stronger. The highest type of person, Nietzsche argues, is not limited to wait for fate to bring you pain. Practice a discipline of suffering. Seek voluntary discomfort, exhausting training of the athlete, the artist's exhausting practice. Why? Because when choosing your difficulties, you develop resilience necessary to face those that do not choose. You're not just enduring life, you're training for it. A society that fears pain only produces mediocrity. Create a world without risk, without struggle or greatness. By learning to using suffering as a forge, you do more than just enduring. You create, you grow. You have seen the prison, you have found the engine, and now you have the tool to mold you. So what kind of the person you become when you no longer fear that they hurt you? You become the author sovereign of your own life. You have seen the prison of weakness. You have felt the engine of power, and you have sustained the forging from suffering. This is the final step, living the truth. Nietzsche calls it the path to radical authenticity. But its most crucial point is this. The authenticity is not about discovering who you are, it's about creating who you are. The main chain that keeps you in the prison of the flock, it is what Nietzsche would call acceptance addiction. Life modern, especially network social, promotes performative authenticity. A carefully managed mask, what do you wear to get likes and share? This is the ultimate submission to the external gaze. To be truly authentic, you must consciously change your self-esteem, leaving aside the external opinions and getting closer to your own internal judgment. This brings us to a brave achievement, feeling comfortable with antipathy. In a conformist world, live an exceptional life will inevitably lead to resentment of the mediocre. To be free, we must be uncontrollable before the usual social tools of praise and shame. And the laboratory essential for this work is the loneliness. Not loneliness, but solitude chosen. It is the chamber of decontamination where finally we can disconnect from the noise of the herd and listen to the fundamental law of our own being. Now, this is not a call to narcissistic egocentrism. The narcissism, Nietzsche would argue, is just another form of weakness, the desperate need of a fragile ego to be heard. The individual truly authentic does not need public, just needs your homework. One is a symptom of weakness that tries to appear strong. The other is the calm one, confidence of the force itself. This is the definitive act of breaking the illusion. You stop being a character in the story from another. You become the author of yours. At the beginning, we asked you if your weakness was it real or just the bars of invisible prison. Now you see the truth. The illusion has vanished. You've seen how it was built the cage through moral theft. You have found the will to power like you engine. You have learned to use the suffering as forging and authenticity radical as a key. The word weakness, it no longer has the same meaning because you see the system as it is. So now, when you feel that pressure to be small, if pleasant, the you will recognize not as a virtue, but like an echo of the flock, and you have the option to ignore it. This freedom is the first step to becoming what Nietzsche called a creator of new values, a bridge to a better future for humanity. So the question is not anymore, am I weak? The real one question that only you can answer now, it is this. What great thing will I build? With the strength I now know I possess. If you are ready to continue the journey, subscribe and join this circle of thinkers. See you next time. Complete the circle.